Kumar.
I think arms is not the only issue. I think we've got to look at the new sources of insecurity and the changing character of war. There are a lot of people who profit by war. I think we need to identify these forces. And what are they? There are enormous amount of criminality. The relationship of the mafia to arms proliferation. We need to look at mercenary behavior. We need to look at new forms of security operations. There's a whole range of actors that we need to look at and try to create a much more comprehensive strategy, if you like, to meet those sources of insecurity. I think arms is only one aspect.
Arm is one aspect, but you have drugs trafficking. And in Africa, it is more and more serious because they used to be only transit. Now they are consumer or producer. You have trafficking in minerals. For instance, in the Great Lake region, people don't need money. They traffic in minerals or in ivory, and they have enough to fund their own army. If you have 100 carats, you have what?
I think what we are moving towards, I think, is to get a greater regime of transparency and accountability.
In other words, we've got to find out what is going on.
We've got to monitor, we've got to research, we've got to make it more transparent, we've got to denounce where it is necessary, but we need a greater transparent regime and greater accountability. But I mean, whilst we see this picture, I must say that there are many, many positive aspects that we have to also look at. I think that states are fundamentally committed to ending wars. I mean, let's take Liberia. Many conflicts have ended. El Salvador, Guatemala, Mozambique, Angola, Liberia.
Did they end because of political action or because it had reached what's called the culminating point? Everyone was exhausted.
There are several factors here, but I would say that it is a combination of factors and the will of regional governments and states to be in a position to create a framework under which normative behavior is ensured, accountability is created. And I think that what we are moving towards very much is a situation where also peace is becoming fashionable and it's good politics. The media and peace in many situations, the Northern Ireland example is one. There are many such situations where politicians also want to end conflicts.
Is a political, there is a tendency, but we forget also that unless a war is reported in the media, people don't talk about it.
Exactly.
You have many wars not reported, or in the making, war in the making, but people don't talk about it.
But by the time I and my colleagues arrive, it's often too late. The war has begun. It's too late for conflict prevention, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's important. I think as far as looking at the international community's role and responsibility, we should be, we're talking about prevention, and so we should be looking well in advance in terms of how our aid or trade policies are addressing kind of root causes of conflict. We need to be far more aware of the impact our policies have on root causes of conflict. So in a way we are already intervening, but it's not a military intervention, it's a kind of economic aid trade intervention. And I think that's, I mean, there is not enough sensitivity, I think, in terms of, whether it's structural adjustment programs or whether it's our debt policies or whether it's arms trade. There is not enough sensitivity to the impact which the international community's policies are having on root causes of conflict and the potential for impacting on kind of social tensions. And so I think that's something which we definitely have to address as the international community.
I think that yes, it is certainly true that the television spotlight is not in any particular war. But I would suggest that all wars are today much better monitored. There is a much greater awareness and a complex coalitions which have evolved to prevent, to resolve these conflicts. I think there is never in history have we seen a generation of interest and new momentum to make war impossible. I think that if one is to talk about the millennium, the next century, I think it is to try to mobilize those positive factors, the new tools which are available, the creative opportunities which exist, so as to see that there is a framework under which these conflicts could be resolved in a more peaceful manner.
Kumar, does this give you the hope that war can be impossible, unfashionable?
I think that, for example, this example is a classic one where the question of Mobutu. There are cases where the use of force, may be the only possible resort. but that is the last resort, not
Yes,
the first
I
resort.
agree.
But do you have it there hovering as a threat, as leverage, as it's called in the diplomatic world?
I think often, I think that leverage may be a very useful factor. But what I'm basically trying to stress is that before you come to the use of force, there are many, many instruments that civil society can use to transform that society. And internationally and nationally, I think we need to mobilize those forces fully and build coalitions around transformation. I think that's what we need to do.
But my problem, I'm sorry, but the international community you are talking, I don't see it now. I'm waiting. I don't see it.
You can take cases where you have a blatant dictatorship with corruption. Now, we know some cases. What is being done. This is, I think, what you mean. We have some countries.
I must make it very clear that for me, the international community is not just an intergovernmental system. I think the international community is people, NGOs, civil society, citizens, large numbers of people who care and who really say no to all this. And I think we need to mobilize those energies. We must not think of the international community as a few bureaucrats or somebody out there in the intergovernmental system.
I agree.
We are a community of solidarity, and we need to mobilize that.
And for that, you need a code of conduct for the international and national NGOs.
Yes.
Because you have so many. You have a code of conduct for journalists, for lawyers, for everyone, physician. You need one for international NGOs. If not, you have a disaster.
But yet there was pessimism a few minutes ago that there isn't really political will. Are the politicians going to talk like this?
I'm sorry, the question of political will depend on the ability of its citizens to make politicians accountable.
But are they motivated, are they mobilized by what they see in Rwanda, in Mali, in Mozambique?
Yes.